Dacă ai și tu 40 de lei în cont, haide să-ți arăt cum îi poți înmulți cu aplicația Chicken Roll 2. Și acum îți explic și de ce chiar aplicația asta. În primul rând, e total gratuită și fără reclame, iar apoi începătorii primesc bonusuri uriașe și toate câștigurile ți intră direct în cont în mai puțin de 5 minute. Haide să-ți arăt cum funcționează, uite. Acum merge deja totul bine și am câștigat 15.000 de lei direct în cont. Deci acum apăsam pe retrageți și uite, în timp ce vorbesc, deja îmi intră bani în cont. Super rapid, uite și notificarea, în mai puțin de un minut. Deci a fost totul super rapid, fără nicio întârziere. Deci acum e rândul tău. Încearcă și tu să câștigi la fel și descarcă aplicația Chicken Roll. Îți las linkul sub video. Începe și tu acum și baftă cu câștigurile.
Everybody, this is Brian from Carving is Fun, and I wanted to go over a couple of quick and easy cuts for you guys to learn, especially if you're beginners, so that you're able to cut in your wood a little bit more efficiently and know how to control the blade a little bit better so you have an overall safer experience. I am going to be using a slice-resistant glove, which I do recommend for beginners, just to prevent yourself from hurting yourself. I also have a thumb guard, which helps when you're pushing on the back of the blade, and as well as when you're doing like a paring cut, so you don't accidentally cut yourself. Obviously you don't need them, but I'm just going to do it just for purpose of the video. All right, so starting off, your most basic cut, it's a rough cut. Most of you guys are going to know how to do this because you did it as kids. You're basically just taking your blade and you're just like having at it. You're just pushing the knife all the way through the blade. Notice that when you're pushing all the way through, there's no regard for what's over here. You can hit it, anything over here, whether it be finger, another person, or something you just don't want to cut and damage. You can also damage your blade if you hit something hard. This is not normally ideal, especially if you're doing whittling, but it is common if you're removing large sections of wood really quickly. Just mind where the blade's flying. But the more controlled version of that is what's called a push cut. Now for this, we're going to hold the knife in our dominant hand, and this is just going to be our control. With our offhand that's holding the block of wood here, all the pushing I'm doing is done with my left hand's thumb. So I'm literally pushing it through, and I'm also rotating and controlling the blade with my right hand. This allows the blade to slice through the wood and gives you a better and cleaner cut instead of just like pushing your blade through and like bullying it through. Now this is a much safer version to doing like a rough cut, because when you're pushing it through, notice this is as far as I'm able to push the blade. This is the maximum range of movement of this knife, and my finger is out of the way. So it's not very likely that I'm going to cut myself. And it usually ends up with a nice kind of like flattish cut. An alternate version to this is what I've been calling like a sweep cut, or I've seen other people call it too. You're kind of cutting more downward angled into the wood, and then you kind of sweep forward and you create like a J pattern. So I like to push into the wood, and then I kind of flatten it out, and then I create this nice little sweeping cut right there. It's great for adding details in there, or if you just want more like an organic look to certain curves or something like that. So you're pushing in, and then you're rotating the blade to go along with the wood grain and take advantage of the wood grain going up and down. Very easy little cut. I like to use it a lot. Another very useful cut that you're going to use a lot is what's called a stop cut. Essentially all this stop cut is you're taking it and you're pushing the blade right into the wood, and you create this little wedge right here. What this does is when you combine it with a push cut here, the blade will go up to that stop cut and stop. You'll feel it stop. And then what it gives you is a nice little ledge right there. So this is very useful, especially if you're creating like a face. You can see right now I have the start of a nose. That's just 2 cuts right there. Well, 3 cuts if you include the stop cut. So literally 3 cuts, and I have the start of a face, which is very useful and quite efficient. Usually you're going to be doing a lot of stop cuts. It's a very useful way to add detail and control where your blade is going to go into the wood. Another popular option that a lot of people do is what's called a paring cut. So your normal push cuts, you're pushing away from you, but a paring cut, you will have the blade coming towards you. And this is fine. I know a lot of people in places, like especially in Boy Scouts, say don't ever have the blade coming at you. That's because usually kids are just taking the blade and they're pulling it towards them. That is not what we're doing here. We're creating a very controlled cut with the blade coming towards you. Now what I'm doing here is I'm having my thumb, which is kind of like the brace for my hand, putting in the spot where the blade will not be coming out. I'm putting the blade on the wood, and I'm taking my hand and I'm just squeezing it. Like all you're doing is like you're squeezing Get out of my hand. All you're doing is like you're squeezing your hand shut. That's all you're doing for a paring cut. And it's very controlled. You can see that it will not come anywhere near me. It's not going to come at me. The range of movement of this blade is limited. And you're seeing that the blade is missing my thumb because it's out of the way. We don't want to start doing paring cuts where you're just banging the knife right up against your thumb, even if you have a thumb guard. It builds bad habits, and then especially for you if you're going to be doing whittling on the go, you're probably not going to have a thumb guard. Like my go-to whittling kit that I carry on my hip is just my pocket knife and a leather strap. There's no guards, no hand gloves, no thumb guards, nothing. So building good habits while you're carving, even with protective gear, is ideal for long-term success and preventing yourself from getting hurt. All right, next one we're going to do here is a V-cut, and I see this in two different options. First one is basically like two angled and opposing stop cuts. It creates like a V wedge right here, and this is useful again for making faces. You can also see it for like creating little geometric patterns. You can do V-cuts all up here and you create a neat little pattern effect going on there. Another version of the V-cut is creating like a trench in the side of the wood. So this is very much like chip carving. I'm going to stick the blade in at an angle and kind of just like drag it towards me. And then I'm going to flip it around, and then I'm going to mirror that cut and hopefully get my blade edges intersecting, and then you can see that the wood just comes off and it creates a neat little trench in there. I see this is great for a lot of like floral or vine patterns or anything like that. You can create looks of leaves that are indented into the wood. It's a great extra method for cutting the wood in a controlled cut. Finally, the last one we're going to do here, it's called a stab cut or a pyramid cut, but basically we're going to take the same thing that we did with the V cut right here that goes along and creates this little trench, but we're going to create a centralized cut using multiple cuts. So I'm going to do it with this one with 3, and it's going to kind of turn out to look like a inverted pyramid when I'm done here. So 3 cuts going straight into the wood, and then at the end you can see that this part kind of comes off as a chip, and it looks like a small pyramid going on there. And then you have here like an indentation. You can do more sides, like 4 to 8 or something like that, and you create more of a rounded look. I see people doing this with creating irises for like eyes and whatnot. So it's another great option of adding detail into your wood. And it's very simple, very much like chip carving. It'll help you create nearly anything that you want to do to create extra patterns. But those cuts there are the basics for whittling. If you master all those cuts, you can literally carve anything you want with just your knife. It is very easy to do, super simple, and I do recommend you guys practicing them whenever you get the chance. All right, as always, thank you for watching, everybody, and hope you have yourselves a great day.